You're listening to The Breakfast Show on Faith FM with myself, Skafy, my good friend, Narek, and of course, producer Shells, sitting at the desk. Today, if you're listening live, is the 19th of February, 2026. We have a great show ahead of us because Mr. Narek.
Yes.
You're going to be talking to us about this Gen Z term. Have you heard about brain rot, producer Shells? Brain rot. You will find out what brain rot is and what are Gen Zs doing to prevent it,
yes,
to fight against it. And I'm going to be talking about the latest remarks by Senator Pauline Hanson about Muslims. She appears to have said that there are not such a thing as good Muslims. It looks like she backtracked that at least to a certain degree. So we're going to be looking into that and seeing what can we learn from those remarks. How can we understand them a little bit better? We'll see an interesting angle an interesting perspective from her remarks. But before we get into any of that, we will get to a quiz question first. So
I had this quiz question nearly broke me out in singing, but for the sake of the listeners and you guys, I will restrain myself.
Okay, producer Shell.
They use this passage in the Bible Sight and Sound, big, Bible theatre productions, and it's like, no, I can't tell you because then you're going to get the answer. I'll tell you when we tell you the answer. Okay, so you've got to complete this passage. Saul has killed his thousands, but David his... And it breaks out in song, and it's a really cool song.
Oh, really? So is that a sight and sound,
yeah, sight and sound.
About the life of David? I like these sight and sound.
Yeah, they're really
theaters.
good.
Yes, I watched some of them online, and they're really good. Yeah.
Most of them are pretty biblically accurate with a little bit of artistic liberality.
Yeah. So far, the ones I think I watched the Jonah one, the Noah.
Oh, you got to watch them all. Esther's really good, and this one's obviously from David.
Yeah. Cool. Very good. All right. So what was the quiz question one more time, producer Shells?
Yes. So complete the answer, complete the passage. Saul has killed his thousands, but David his... And if you really want to do something fun, go look up David's Sight and Sound and listen to the song.
Okay. All right.
You guys can text us too on 0491 064 669. Did you want to try?
Sure.
Yeah. Very good.
Yeah, well done, Eric. All right, Eric, tell me a little bit about brain rot. What is it?
Yes, well, obviously, Gen Z these days, they dominate the social media game, Skafy. So the question actually based on reportings from the National Geographic about concerns around accelerated cognitive aging linked to excessive digital stimulation. So brain rot, the term for brain rot is actually a cultural term reflecting research into shortened attention spans and cognitive strain from heavy uses of social media, uses of your phone, whether that's through Instagram, TikTok, etc. So basically what scientists are saying is that stimulation from these, rapid fire content, whether it's short videos, endless feed, may actually impact people's memories and sustain concentration. So think about it. If your brain is trained for 15 seconds of burst content, what happens when you actually need to get down and study for 45 minutes or do a Bible study for 45 minutes? I think a lot of the Gen Z people these days struggle with that.
Not only Gen Z, I think that even young children as well, and even us as adults, I think we can unlearn how to have that deep focus, deep concentration if our brain is used to get dopamine hits from 10 seconds, 5-second content.
Yeah. And so
So this is what brain rot is? So brain rot is just like doom scrolling.
Yes, doom scrolling.
And having your brain kind of like rotting and becoming less capable of focusing.
Yes. So basically like when people like in my community or etc., if you're gaming a lot, even gaming as well, has to do with brain rot.
Yeah. Yeah, because gaming, look, I think that it all has to do with dopamine.
Yes.
Because gaming, you're getting like these dopamine hits every time that you're hitting goals. But then they make the game in such a way that you're hitting these goals pretty often.
Yeah.
So you're there.
Yeah.
And then when you go to real life where it's not so predictable.
Yes.
Because gaming is very predictable. Even these newer games that are like open-ended and everything, it's all very predictable.
Yeah.
Real life is not that predictable.
Exactly.
And things are harder here.
Exactly. And so why this affects Gen Z specifically is because obviously we are the first generation to be raised in a smartphone era. I'm not too sure about you, Skafy. Were you raised with many smartphones, etc.?
No,
How
no.
was life back when you were
No, look,
my age?
when I was born, we used to have still like these like really brick or relatively big dumb phones.
Wow.
I mean, like the Nokias, they had like these indestructible phones. They could fall from the 20th floor of your building, and they would be fine and working. I remember when my parents. I remember like when we first got the first Nokia phone that had colors on the
Wow.
display. That was like, wow, this is so beautiful. There's colors here. So that's the area that I grew up in.
Yeah.
So definitely the smartphones. I was a teenager.
Yeah.
If not a young adult by the time that smartphones became a thing, and they're still not super smart. Like those first iterations of iPhones, they're not really smart. There's not a lot of apps.
Yeah.
Basically, you had like your phone and your music combined in one. That was pretty much it. It was an iPod with phone setting.
Yeah. And obviously with social interactions, back when you were younger, would you say that compared to how people are now, was it a lot easier to kind of talk to people?
I mean, this is all that we had, really.
Wow.
I mean, we had my era, like when I was in high school, or even maybe a little bit before, the big thing was the MSN Messenger, which was like a chat, but it was different from the chat pages. I remember in my house we had like a computer pretty early on. I think that my first computer was around 1994,
Wow.
95. So I was maybe 6 years old,
Yeah.
and I really enjoyed kind of playing with it.
Yeah.
So they had these online chats.
Yeah.
But these online chats, you realize, that there's some crazy people that started to come in. They started to become a bit kind of a dodgy.
Yeah.
And then MSN came up with this MSN chat, which was a two-way chat, kind of like what WhatsApp is today, but on your computer.
Yeah.
So you could talk to your friends
Okay.
directly.
Wow.
And that was the big thing.
So everyone was on, is it MSN?
Yeah.
See, I haven't really heard of that. So it's good to kind of take
That's
a deep
right,
dive.
man. This is like, feels like it's like prehistoric artifacts now. But yeah.
Well, and so on this article, they actually even talk about the term iPad kids. I'm not too sure if you heard about that, where a lot of young kids these days from the ages of even youngest as 1 year old to maybe about 6 years old, where they are now becoming very addicted to their iPads.
Yeah.
And so starting from a very young age, scientists are starting to realize, or from this article, that it's now been embedded to children such as 1 year old to 6 years old. So the trend of brain rot is starting for the Gen Z generation at a very young age. And so, like seeing that, how the brain kind of develops, it's kind of scary for where it's headed in the future, because if we're kind of being heavily reliant on social media or even our phones or iPads, trying to read something like the Bible that has a lot of pages, etc., our kids or generation these days won't really be in tune with that. So I guess that's kind of the challenge. And what I love about this article, it's actually telling us how Gen Z is actually fighting back.
Okay, how do you fight back against brain rot?
Yes. And so there's a term that we use. It's called touch grass. I don't know if you've heard about that.
Yeah.
So you were telling me this morning that now you run on grass.
That's right.
Yeah. So
I'm touching grass with my feet
yes,
indirectly.
Yes.
I'm wearing shoes.
Exactly. And so they're actually encouraging kids these days to put on app timers. I know that you have the same thing, but also encourage them to get outside. Get out with nature, get off your phones or your gaming devices and actually touch some grass. Go out into nature, and try and ground yourself within the earth. Another one is detox trends. No morning phone calls, no more, phone-free dinners. I'm not too sure if you heard of So like everyone has to put their phones in a jar, in a cage and put it away for dinner.
Yeah.
Cause I think when family dinners nowadays, kids are actually struggling just to have dinner with their families. I think, well, I'm even guilty of it myself. I would set up a phone with YouTube playing while I'm eating dinner and I'm with my family. And so another mechanism that they're using is delayed dopamine moments. As you were saying about gaming, is that you're constantly getting these dopamine hits.
Yep.
And so they're now saying that it's good for people, and to you listeners out there, if you're kind of on this trend of being hit with dopamine a lot, you can't really read, physical books, or you can't even listen to long form podcasts. So that's what they're encouraging, is reading physical books. Journaling is actually a good one, and also walking without headphones. I'm not too sure about you, Skafy, but do you train with music or?
Zero music.
Wow. And see, that's something nowadays.
Just me and my thoughts. And God.
See, like for a young person like me, I don't think I could ever go to the gym or train without my headphones. So, what this article is encouraging us is to go to the gym, walk outside with no headphones. Just go with yourself and your thoughts. Studying in deep focus blocks. So that's another one. And also, offline clubs and phone-free events. So they're saying that real world community spaces and in-person hobbies, groups is probably the best way forward. And this isn't like, the older generation saying you need to do this, but it's young people actually being empowered, to live a better life, not digitally, but with community.
All right. Well, since you're talking about hobbies in the real world, let me do some advertising here.
Yes.
For, I think one of the greatest hobbies of all time is bird watching.
Wow.
Bird watching is like playing Pokemon Go, but on real life with God's birds and God's creation. Because you get out there, you're going for a hike. If you're into hiking already, that's great because you add an extra layer of something interesting.
Yeah.
Just grab yourself a pair of binoculars. They don't need to be very expensive.
Yeah.
And just go and just watch the birds. Try to learn their names. Try to imitate their sounds. It's so much fun. And then there's apps you can download. There's one app called eBird.
Okay.
Another bird called Merlin app that is a Cornell University app.
Yeah.
And you actually log in the birds that you see.
Wow.
And you start creating a life list. And your goal is to see all of the birds that there are.
Okay.
It's a really fun hobby to try. And it's 100%, well, except for like logging the birds on your phone, or you could use it just like a regular book. It's 100% offline. It's just like you and God and nature and your friends. And you also have to be quiet.
Yeah.
Because if you're chatting and talking too much, you're going to spook the birds out.
Well, maybe let's have that as a challenge. And I'll challenge myself to do that. So after this, I'll take some information from you, Skafy, because I want to do that. And these are some practical takeaways for our listeners. Start your morning without your phone for 20 minutes. Try one deep focus hour per day and replace one scroll session with physical activity. So that's a challenge to you listeners, to take away these practical, I guess, things that you can apply to your life.
That's right. And if you'd like for me to send you the link for these birding apps, text me here, 0491 064 with the hashtag bird, and I will send them to you. I think you're going to love it. You know what? And as a Christian, it's even more special because then I learn about birds, their behavior.
Yeah.
And each bird has a little superpower. And each bird represents an element of the character of God, or an element of that. They all have some spiritual lessons to teach us, which is super cool.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
We're going to be talking a little bit about a bombshell statement that was made by Senator Pauline Hanson on Monday. And we're going to be looking at what she said and what she said later, and let's just talk about it and see what we can get out of it. So, but first before we do that, let's reveal the answer to the quiz question. Producer Shells, please.
Yes, I had some interesting answers, coming through. Okay, so complete this passage. Saul has killed his thousands, but David his 10,000s.
Okay. There you go. And Saul was really jealous about David because of that. He wanted to be the one killing tens of thousands. And yeah, there you go. Thank you very much, Producer Shells. All right, let's talk about Pauline Hanson's statement. So she gave an interview on Monday to Sky News, and they were talking about, the context was the ISIS brides. Now, have you heard about the ISIS brides kind of a crisis?
No, enlighten me.
So there are a number of Australian citizens that married men who went out to fight as terrorists on the side of ISIS. So what they've done is that they left Australia, they went to Syria, they went to other places that were dominated by the then called ISIS Caliphate, so Iraq, Syria, in that sort of a region of the Levant, they call it the Levant. And now that ISIS has been pretty much disbanded, they're trying to come back to Australia.
Wow.
And the question is, should we let them in? Because, they were Australian citizens.
Yeah.
They're trying to come back. But then the security questions that are being raised is, okay, but they're coming back, but are they still the same person? Have they been radicalized even further?
Yeah.
Are they gonna now that the ISIS dream of starting a caliphate in that region of the world is gone?
Yeah.
Are they going to try to establish that here
Even
in
more.
Australia?
Yeah.
What's going on? And a number of these people have actually been temporarily banned until they could find out more about it.
Yeah.
So this is what the immigration officers have to figure out. Okay,
Wow.
these people coming to Australia, like, are they sympathetic to
Yeah.
radical Islamic fundamentalism, for example, or are they just kind of coming back home with their tails between their legs and saying, "Hey, look, I'm so sorry. I was young and dumb and didn't know what I was doing." There are a number of these. They call them the ISIS brides, and there's different kinds of situations. Some of them have children, some of them don't have children. Some of them married them over there. Some of them left Australia married. So it's a mixed bag of different options. So that was the context that they were talking about, and within that context, Pauline Hanson, who has having a pretty strong instance about putting restrictions, particularly on immigration from people from certain Muslim countries or at least regions. She said this. So I'm going to play the interview here for you to listen. So hear it out.
Welcome them. I tell you what, I've got no time for the radical Islam. Their religion concerns me because what it says in the Quran, they hate Westerners, and that's what it's all about. You say, oh well, there's good Muslims out there. Well, I'm sorry. How can you tell me there are good Muslims? If jihad is ever called, and people must understand this, go and research, go and understand about this. And the ones that will suffer, as those Jews did on that, when they were murdered and slaughtered. Pauline, and that's what we've got to realise could happen. I mean,
all right, so that was that statement.
Wow.
So she's said, look, you're
that.
saying, because the interviewer was asking, hey, but are you concerned about radical Muslims, but what about the good Muslims? And then she says, like, how do you tell me that there's good Muslims if the Quran, if what they follow the Quran, that they hate Westerners, and if jihad is ever called, what happened to the Jewish community at the Bondi attacks can happen to all of us Australians. That's what she's talking about. What do you think about that statement?
I think it's very.
Derek, what do you reckon, man?
She's very bold, actually, for even saying that out in public. Obviously, Pauline Hanson has been a presence in Australia for a long time, and she hasn't backed down in a lot of her statements. Right now, she is just letting loose. And so, personally, for me, I see this and how she's going, and I think a lot of Australians are now siding with her and seeing, what she's saying because of instances like the Bondi attack. So, yeah, I'm kind of like...
Yeah, definitely. She's definitely... I think that a lot of Australians are feeling, that she's representing their sentiments. But at the same time, look, let's kind of take a deep breath here and look into it, from different angles, including, political strategy as well. She got a lot of backlash from that comment, even from some of her own supporters. Yeah. And so she came down and she said, look, she basically said, look, I don't really believe that there are no good Muslims.
Wow.
She just kind of said, look, I'm also referring to Muslims that want to impose Sharia law in Australia and Muslims that are subscribing to radical Islamic ideologies. Yeah. So she came out that. So she said, look, there are okay Muslims out there. She used that word, okay Muslims out there. Yeah. She didn't fully backtrack, but she backtracked. And I just want to talk to you a little bit because I find the world of politics pretty fascinating. Yeah. And there's this thing called outrage politics. Wow. Outrage politics is very interesting. We have Mr. Donald over there in America. He is really, really good at this as well. And there are other politicians that what they find is that they say something really outrageous or really, that makes people feel outraged or indignant about something. And then that actually brings their popularity up a lot because a lot of people feel like, wow, finally someone is hearing us out, someone with a pulse, someone with a backbone, someone saying. And then what they do after that, it's a pattern. notice that pattern. After that, people they will have like a backlash. Say, hey, do you really say that? Do you really mean that? And I say, no. Look, hear me out. This is not exactly what I said. Or the media distorted what I said. What I meant was this. What I meant was that. Just enough so that they won't get into like further trouble or political trouble. So they're not trying not to alienate the indecisives, because then they're what they're communicating is two things. For the people that are supporters of them, they're saying, hey, look, I'm your hero. I am going to speak the truth on your behalf, something that everybody thinks, but everybody's afraid to say. I'm going to say it. But then when they backtrack and they say, oh, the media distorted, or look, this is not what I said. I actually meant this or that. They're saying to the people that are on the sidelines, on the fences, saying, hey, you know what, they're being moderate, they're just, having a bit of a heated conversation. It was just like an expression and so on. Let's talk about that. Maybe there's but there is in that outrage thing, what you do is that you generate headlines because everybody's talking about you.
Yeah.
Media's talking about you, the radio's talking about you, social media's talking about you. You generate a conversation. You're in the forefront, and you're basically buying real estate in people's minds for free.
Yeah.
So it is a political strategy.
Yeah.
Now, it can backfire over time. They call it the outrage fatigue. After a while, some people, particularly like people that are more in the moderate field, they're going to start like, again, some outrageous statements. One example of that was that in the running up for the elections in the United States, President Donald Trump mentioned that there were Haitians that were eating people's dogs and cats.
Wow.
And pets.
Yes, I remember seeing that.
In Springfield, Ohio. Turns out it was not true at all.
Wow.
The Springfield, Ohio police said, look, we never received any reports. Even the Republican government said, never happened. The mayor said never happened. No, but there were some videos online that people realized later on that it were fake videos that were used to kind of support that. There was one lady that had cats, cat fur in her teeth that said, oh, she's eating the cats. Turned out she was not even Haitian. She was like an American person who was just doing cruelty with animals, but it was unrelated. But by then, everybody was talking about it. And then he said, okay, let me see what else he said, what else Trump said in the debate. So you actually, there is the economics, a dynamics of outrage politics. Now, but let's move on to the Quran side of things. So Pauline Hanson mentioned if jihad is ever called, and the jihad, look, even among Muslims, there's a lot of different interpretations. Yeah. The Quran does say that, look, if you as a Muslim, if you get attacked, you are allowed to fight back. Yeah. But the Quran says don't but within rules. Yeah. Don't be a transgressor. Don't torture or do things. It's kind of like saying a right to self-defense, which is very different from a Christian perspective, because Jesus says, look, don't even resist the evildoer. Yeah. If someone slaps you in the cheek, just offer turn the other one. So this is a fundamental difference between the teachings of Muhammad and the teachings of Jesus in that regard. Yeah. Jesus is a fully 100% pacifist approach to violence versus the Quran saying, look, don't start it, but if they're persecuting you, you can fight back. Yeah. But then what a lot of Muslims would interpret as this, who is going to call a jihad? Because the reality is there's no caliphate, there's no official caliphate. And a lot of when ISIS got into power with al-Baghdadi, and he kind of self-proclaimed himself as a caliph, and he called jihad, how many Muslims actually heeded to that? Yeah, a very tiny amount. They were the radicalized ones. Yeah. The majority of Muslims, they are peace-loving people.
Of course.
The Bible says, Jesus says, look, when you go to a certain city to preach the gospel, to announce the good news, find some sons of peace, the Bible calls, literally, people of peace. There are people of peace everywhere. Jesus himself, the only two times that Jesus was actually amazed with someone's faith were with non-Jews. Yeah. So, and also there's the Muslims, how a lot of them interpret this jihad. They say, look, there is this jihad is like your self-defense. Yeah. But said this is the lesser jihad. The greater jihad is the jihad of your soul against, your flesh, against your lusts and temptations and kinds of things. I'm not doing this. I'm not doing any Muslim apology here. This is a Christian radio. We talk about Jesus all day long. But I think that it is important for us to sieve through and filter through what is political rhetoric, what is political discourse versus what is reality, versus what is fact. I want all of my Muslims brothers and sisters to really get to know the grace of the Lord Jesus, that Jesus died for them at the cross, that they can be saved. But at the same time, I don't think that the way to go is to classify and label all Muslims as something that are not love-peacing people, because this is definitely not in the Bible. So I'm analyzing the world from a Bible perspective, and when something is going off, I have to call it out.
You're listening to the Breakfast Show podcast on Faith FM. Positively different.
And we've just been talking about Pauline Hanson's latest remarks on Muslims, from her Sky News interview. If you'd like the link for that interview, let me know. I can send it to you. But also, if you're listening to us and you are a Muslim, if you'd like to learn more about Jesus, I can send you a resource that I believe you are going to love. It is the Gospel of Luke. Just the Gospel of Luke is the story of Jesus as narrated by Luke. And it's a tiny little book, but it's a really amazing, and I think it's going to really increase your faith and your love for God. So if you'd like to get that one, #Luke. Text me here, #Luke to 0491 064669, and we'll arrange that book to be delivered to you. Again, if you're a Muslim and you want to know more about the story of Jesus, I can send you the Gospel of Luke for absolutely free, 0491 064669. Now I have the honor and the privilege to invite my friend Dr. John Ashton for an interview. He's going to be talking to us about the contribution of Christian scientists into the development of science as we know it today. So, Dr. John Ashton, good morning to you. Welcome. It's great to have you here on The Breakfast Show today.
Yeah, great to be online this morning.
Dr. John, tell us a little bit about, because look, I've heard it many times, and there's this propaganda circulating around, this myth that if you have to be a Christian, you've got to kind of keep your brain elsewhere. Maybe, store it in a shelf, put it there, because there is no way you can reconcile faith in God with science, with scientific facts and evidences. But when you look at the history of science, I think that a lot of the fathers of science were actually Christian men. Isn't that right?
Well, that's right. In fact, just about all of them were very strong Christians. And, of course, some of the detractors that are a little bit concerned about this are saying, well, look, they were only Christians because that was a socially accepted thing to do. But when you look into the history of so many of these scientists, they were very strong Christians. They were, as well as writing in the area of science, they wrote articles defending the Bible. They wrote articles defending the miracles in the Bible, these sort of things. For example, Isaac Newton wrote far more on Bible topics than he did on science, and yet he's recognised as probably the greatest mathematician and scientist so far. And he wrote commentaries on Daniel. He wrote commentaries on Revelation. So, this is one of the aspects, again, that show that these guys were really strong Christians, and God blessed them. And one of the things that has happened is that on the other side of this, we have a lot of false stories that have been circulated. For example, another very strong Christian was Christopher Columbus. And but back in the 1840s, the very popular author Washington Irvine, an American author who wrote a lot of not only plays and novels, but wrote on history as well. He was the ambassador to Spain at one stage for the United States. He wrote a book on the history of Columbus and wrote that Columbus had this big argument with the authorities at the University of Salamanca, who were all promoting flat Earth, and that, there was this big conflict between the Bible, and that the Bible taught the flat Earth, and that people believed in the Middle Ages that the Earth was flat, and so forth. Largely from that text in Revelation talks about the four corners of the earth. I think it might be Revelation 7. I can't remember. But in actual fact, of course, there was no such conflict. Most of the educated people in Europe at that time knew that the earth was a sphere. And matter of fact, they'd calculated the diameter of the earth. And there were some of the calculations were actually quite close as well. And we forget that with Christians that essentially set up the universities, like the University of Paris, the University of Salamanca, Oxford, Montpellier, all these universities that became the famous learning centres of Europe were founded by Christians.
I heard that Harvard University was also established actually as a Christian missionary training center.
Oh, yes. Most of the Ivy League universities in the States were all founded on Christian basis. Yeah, they were founded as Christian universities. And so what has happened is we find that down through the literature, there's been a lot of false claims along this line. If we go to, some of the more recent ones like Carl Sagan, he wrote a number of books and articles claiming that the Bible taught a flat earth and essentially then went about debunking it sort of thing. And of course, he was so widely read that this has helped promote this concept that educated people reject the Bible account. And he wrote along the lines that unless we stop teaching Bible aspects, that we're going to send civilization backwards, take us back into these so-called dark ages, which again is a misnaming of what has actually happened. Of course, the film that came out in 1955, and then I think a little bit later, 1965 as a film, Inherit the Wind, which was an account of the Scopes trial. So the Scopes trial was where this teacher in the United States was a setup really, but it was supposedly teaching evolution in a state school. And at that stage, though, it wasn't legal to teach evolution in a state school. And this trial was drummed up. But essentially the way the film was presented was that at all costs, the public must be protected against this so-called teaching of creation that science has debunked. But if we look at some of the greatest scientists like James Clerk Maxwell, and Einstein said he was the greatest scientist, mathematician since Newton. He, showed that light was a combination of electric and magnetic fields, developed Maxwell's equations, which were quite advanced, developed the kinetic theory of gases and so forth, to explain gas movement at a molecular level, all these sort of things. He was a very strong anti-evolutionist. Another very strong anti-evolutionist was Joule, the thermodynamicist, and we have the unit of heat named after him. He was, again, a very strong anti-evolutionist. I think of Francis Crick as well, the man that won the Nobel Prize for his research in decoding the human genome, DNA. He also became a very strong creation advocate. But in his case, he said he started as an evolutionist, and the more he studied the DNA, he said, look, there's no way this can have happened by random. Like, you cannot create a language by random chance. So it's really a myth that is largely getting debunked, particularly by the history of Christianity and even modern day scientists, isn't it? Oh yes, definitely. Another one was Fleming, who developed the whole concept of the radio valve and hence modern communication. Again, he was a very strong anti-evolutionist. These guys spoke out so strongly against this. Another thing that we forget too was that I forgot his name now. The guy who debunked spontaneous generation of life, Van Leeuwen, I just can't remember. Yeah, I'll find out here. Yeah. he again, he was a very strong Christian. So many of these guys that laid the foundation for modern Christianity and actually debunked some of the old myths.
Well, I thought it was
were Christians.
Pastor. Wasn't it Pastor that
No,
debunked
no.
it? Was another guy?
Van Leeuwanion.
Okay.
He was the guy that actually debunked the spontaneous generation concept and showed, that it wasn't wheat didn't turn into mice. So it's quite interesting, however, that we have these very powerful writers like Carl Sagan and so forth that have claimed that there's all this damage would be done if we taught the Bible. And yet it's very interesting, of course, too, that Sagan and another guy, Draper, who was another very much critic of the biblical view, they proposed that, for example, a fetus isn't really human until after 6 months. So that gave way to, acceptance of abortion and these sort of things. So, but one of the big things is, of course, that the theory of evolution says that we arose as a result of random, blind mutations. And so according to them, the mind arose likewise. So if the mind and our thoughts are the result of random blind mutations, how can we trust anything? And I think we can see this as we see more and more today, people beginning to make very irrational decisions and very irrational claims today about, a whole range of topics, which to me is clearly showing as people move away from the wisdom of the Bible and begin introducing their own wisdom. They begin, making claims and assertions that just are no longer logical. And this is, coming out, very strongly. But I think one of the important things is that the claim that, the Bible has slowed the development of science is very much contrary to what actually happened. It was belief in the Christian Bible that God created everything, that God created things to laws, and that we could discover these laws led to the whole concept of the discovery of science. And that is why the West, the Christian West, was so far further advanced than the East, for example. China had developed gunpowder and these sort of things. The Japanese cultures had a lot of advanced weaponry and so forth. But they hadn't really understood nature. They hadn't cracked it. It was only through the Christian fundamental belief that there was a God who had created us in his image and created us so that we could understand his creation that motivated these guys to look for these laws and discover them.
It's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Dr. John. This is such an insightful his history, really, of science. So we have about just a minute left, but I'm wondering, for the folks that want to go deeper into that subject, do you recommend any books, any articles perhaps, or videos, documentaries on the topic that you think would be helpful?
Well, look, I think if you simply Google scientists who were great scientists who were Christians, you will come across multiple lists on the internet that have been set up by different Christian groups. And as you go through these scientists, you can read their biographies and realise how strong Christians these scientists were. They weren't just Christians because it was socially the acceptable thing to do. They had very, very strong beliefs in God. And as a result of that, and that belief in God motivated their scientific research. And furthermore, a lot of them got clues from the Bible itself. Like the guy who discovered ocean currents. The Bible talks about the pathways in the seas that led him to develop that. And the other thing was, I believe that as God says, as we pray to him, God gives us wisdom. And God gave those people wisdom. And people like Newton and Maxwell were head and shoulders above all their peers in terms of their mind being able to understand nature. Maxwell's discoveries and breakthroughs were absolutely brilliant and opened up so much of the science today. And he was such a strong Christian.
Wow, that is amazing. And look, for you listening friend, if you would like to get a book, if you'd like to find out more about creation, text me here to 0491-064-669 with the code word #creation, and we can point you to some really useful, interesting resources for you.
Thanks for being a part of the Faith FM family. Join our community on Facebook or get in touch at 1-800-FAITH-FM.